All right, so are we ready? You think?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go live.
You want a
here.
tripod?
No, because I'm just gonna kind of hold this and point around to different people as long as the battery lasts. So who is one of you guys the host kind of? Or if
I would say Mike's are the Mike and Ash. If anything, Ash is probably the best person on camera that we have.
Especially after I've had 3 beers in a trash room.
Yeah, so let's just make it Ash.
I can host, but I'm not good at the actual conversation.
So we will come to you when we direct the conversation.
Sure.
Let me actually set up for the folks who are watching on the GRM page. We're hanging out with Spectro Racing here. That is Grant over there, and Scott, and you guys know me. We'll introduce Danny in a second, and Ash and Michael. So Spectro Racing, some friends of ours, local Florida autocrossers and track enthusiasts, and they've got a fantastic social media channel. Actually more social media channels than we do. I think you guys have actually cracked the code for Instagram a little bit that we've never been able to get. Of course, all of our subscribers are old as hell, and you guys are young and cool. So you're on the Instagram, but we're recording like a podcast with them tonight, and got some of our friends watching and let you guys look over our shoulders. We've brought Danny Kao over for this particular conversation. Because what we're going to talk about tonight is these guys don't have the experience that I do with on the national scene. We're going to talk a little bit about national autocross versus local autocross, and they're just now kind of getting moving from being active local guys into dabbling in some of these national events. We're at a SCCA national tour right now, so we're going to kind of talk about what the differences are in those events, and just kind of what the commitment levels are like, what the social levels are like, and what the mood is like at these events. I see our friend Tane's watching, who I think is somewhere actually here on site. So you can come over and come over and streak this thing if you wanted to. So let me turn this around and let me kick it over to Michael and Ash over there, who said they were basically the host of the thing. Why don't you set this part of it up? Did I do an okay job of introducing
absolutely
that?
right. So for sure, I mean, we're all Floridians here. I actually started up in North Carolina, which is one of the reasons I really like Dixie, is because we have a lot of the Southeast people come from all over to come down here. But it is a big difference coming to one of the tour events versus going to a local. And I would say out of probably our group, I've been to the most tour events, and I actually went to nationals for a few years, but I've been kind of taking a couple years off. But it definitely has a different attitude. I mean, you go to a local event, you get 5 or 6 runs. I know we usually do 6 runs at Amelia Island, and you get all that time to try to hone your runs, and it's not that far to go, and you probably don't really need a trailer or anything, and you see your local friends, and it just doesn't have the same vibe as this does. But I remember this actually Dixie Tour a few years ago was the first tour event I went to, and it really hooked me because not only do you have all your local friends are here, but also you've got people coming from California and New England and DC region, and showing you that there is indeed a whole other level of driver that you're not even at. So to me, that has always been the draw of how can you really gauge yourself against the national level circuit. And for us here, I mean, Dixie is only a couple hours from Florida, and yet you come here and you've got all this national talent. But it does require a whole different level of preparation, especially mentally. I mean, especially with the 3 runs only. I mean, Mike can tell you today, 3 runs is sometimes not enough.
Definitely not
get
enough.
a clean run in.
If you don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
I walked the course twice.
But that brings us to
lost every single time.
Yeah, that brings us to the first topic, which is local versus national events.
Well, let me bring Danny into this a little bit, and kind of by way of introducing it. Danny Kao is you're DC region member, but you are we're Facebook friends, and every time I see a Facebook post from you from an event, you're someplace different. You're one of the most well-traveled autocrossers.
Only lately.
And lately, but you're somebody that spends a lot of time at events all over the place. And you're also kind of an ambassador for the sport too. I mean, everybody kind of knows who you are. So what for you, like, did you have a moment where you're like, oh, okay, this is a fun sport, I'm going to take it to the next level and start participating on this sort of broader scope? And what was it, a competition thing for you? Was it a social thing for you? Was it both?
Well, I mean, I started on national autocrossing sort of by accident. So I really didn't know about autocross too much, but so I attended a driving school, you know, that Dixie Region hosts. And my instructor was a big time national autocrosser at that time. So he asked me to co-drive. He asked me if I wanted to co-drive with him, and I did that. And then my 4th event was the DC Pro.
Oh wow!
Then you know, a couple months later, he dragged me to Toledo Pro. And the following year, he dragged me to nationals. And then so he actually hand carried me right into the scene. And of course, the preparation, all that stuff initially is different, but after all these years, they really became the same. Yeah. So to me, honestly, I've been doing this for this is my 13th year.
Okay.
I don't really see any difference anymore between national and local events. I drive exactly the same way. I approach it exactly the same way. But there's that stretch of 10 years where your mind changes the entire time. And I got to be more serious, and then I got to be more relaxed, and I got to be more everything. But I think ultimately everything just kind of merged into one.
Yeah.
But it did take quite a bit of time to get here.
How about you guys? I mean, you guys are just kind of getting into the scene on a beyond local level.
Absolutely. So Grant has been doing autocross for.
Yeah, I help run timing and safety and grid, but this is only my second national level event, and just the level of seriousness. Like, I'm kind of more relaxed. I do this for fun. My car isn't like built in this class I run in. I just like it because it's fast. So I kind of more just for fun and like hanging out. So I mean, you know, competitiveness is there too, but this level of seriousness is insane.
Yeah, and I've been autocrossing on and off, and I mean on and off for 6 years or something like that. Right, my car's always broken. So, I mean, for me to jump, this is my second national event as well. So for me to jump into a national event, and usually even with my lack of practice, I'm somewhere in the middle of the field. I am second from last. You know, not including the people who DNF'd, which Mike's one of them. Mike is one of them. But no, I mean, for me to be like just so far down that list is just, it's amazing. And I think I drove okay today, and just to be that far down.
Train, yeah. It's a studio train, so it's the train's going on. I guess I'll talk a little bit because I'm right up here, but you know, I've probably been doing this longer than any of you, I guess. But I first went to nationals 29 years ago. You know, that was my first trip to nationals, 1989. And when I first started autocrossing, I guess I kind of knew that it was something that I wanted to take seriously eventually. And I probably went to nationals before I was ready. But the thing that struck me about that event was not just that the level of competition was so far beyond what I'd experienced to that point. You know, you go out for your first run at solo nationals, and you, especially if you're running a low number, you come back and you're like, oh, that was a great run, and then somebody goes out and puts 4 seconds on you. Yeah. You know, a guy that you've never heard of, and you like that Dunning-Kruger effect kind of makes it.
Absolutely.
Where
it's crazy. Normally at a local event, when you're doing coursework, something like that, you can sit there and probably 25% of the cars you can look at and say, you know, okay, that guy could go way faster than he's going in that car. Yeah. Out here at the national event, it was maybe 2 cars that I saw all day that were like, wow, that guy's really just poking along. For the most part, these guys are intense. They are going 10/10. It just, there's no room to improve.
But now, okay, so do you think that being here and being around that attitude, being among that, has that kind of upped your game a little bit? Are you driving over your head a little bit?
For sure. So I'll actually, talking about going out there and doing a good run and then having somebody really obliterate you. I think it was 2 years ago, for whatever reason, Sam Strano was running in A Street, which is the class I run in, and I don't usually do that great in A Street at the tour events. I've trophied a couple times, but like normally Jason Ruggles, some other vet and Chevy guys would beat me. But Sam Strano came out here and put a whooping on me that was so intense that I seriously considered quitting autocross after that weekend. It was like 4 seconds each day he beat me. I mean, it was something just so intense. I was like, I'm just never going to get there. And it was so much so that the next year when I came here, I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like, I'm just going to here and do some runs and have some fun. And then I think I trophied that year. So it was really like the attitude of you're trying to come out here, and people joke about the serious business autocrossers, and like there's always going to be those people that are taking notes and like reviewing all the data and like really intense about it, and that is the way that you get faster, and that is the way that you can win. But
so have you been able to kind of isolate that attitude and take that attitude that you went fast with? Can you transport that attitude to a local event, to a national event now? Have you gotten to where you can kind of get in that zone where you need to get to when you need to get there?
Not all the time, but I do. I know that my biggest attitude change after doing the tour events when I go to locals is the whole 3 runs mentality of like you have to send it in the first 3. Because at a local event, a lot of people will do basically a recon run and then a couple a little bit faster ones, they do incremental improvement. And that's the big thing I'm lacking as a driver now is that, yeah, I can go out and put down a decent run on the first run, but I can't really make like a huge improvement for the second and third like these guys are doing. Like Greg Schumacher was telling me at the Postal last weekend that some people have this mantra of if you can run it dirty, you can run it clean.
Yeah.
And Greg did that today. He hit 5 cones on his first run. I think possibly even DNF'd or coned his second, but he came out with a great third run and put a good time down. And that's the level that I'm not at yet. And local people don't drive that way. At a local event, when you have a lot of runs, you can incrementally improve each run. You can't go out there and run as hard as you need to, like just for the 3.
And that's interesting you mentioned that, because I've kind of gotten to a point now where if I go to a local event that's 5 runs or 6 runs, my 3 runs are the only ones that I'm paying attention to from an attitude perspective. You know, runs 4, 5, and 6, great for testing, great to get data, great to play around and experiment. But I notice like my attitude changes from runs 1, 2, 3 to any runs after that, you know, in a very, very noticeable way. So, Danny, what was your sort of curve like from going from a guy that was doing it for fun to a guy that wanted to be competitive? Because you've had a great year so far this year in Cam. The odds-on favorite for Cam so far.
It took me a little longer because I can't focus enough to stay in one class.
Yeah.
So I started in STU, and then I did a year and a half in STU. Then I got into F125, which is K-Mod. So I did K-Mod for 4 years.
Oh wow!
But in between, I jumped into I went to a Caterham and D-Mod for a while. I did a C-Mod car for a while. So there's a lot of back and forth. I think that it was great, fantastic, fun time. But I didn't really learn how to drive because I just hop on from classes to classes, and then the shifter cars are so much more different. In 2012. I talked to Sam Strano, and then he says, well, if you know how to drive, you need to buy something that's proper. So I bought an OC506. I started with that in 2012, and I co-drove with Sam Strano in 2013 for 6 months, and that's when I learned to say, okay, here, I'm just going to relax because there's no way I can drive that. I think my breakthrough year, starting getting faster, was 2014. In 2014 to 2000, in the beginning of 16, there was a lot of mental thing that I had to learn. Because, I mean, I think everybody can graduate into driving fairly fast in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
In normal people. I mean, I'm not talking about people like Pilata or somebody who's crazily fast or O'Gorman. We're talking about normal people. I think in about 3-4 years, people can get up to a certain point and we can all be fast at autocross. But your mind has to be there. You have to approach it right. You have to think and know how to autocross. And then that took me good 3 years to learn. I mean, for some people, they pick up that long, but for me, it was a long time.
Yeah, that really might be the difference when you talk about the actual, like, you can go to an Evo school, and by the end of the weekend, you can take novices and you can give them the physical, muscle memory skills to drive a car at the limit. But to do it now, and to do it with pressure on,
especially like you said at a national event, you got 3 goes, and that's it.
You really gotta know
it's like just like Ash was talking about.
So now that you've seen it, now that you're kind of back in it, what do you think is going to take you to get, or do you not want to? Do you not care about getting to that level? You just want
No,
to have
I mean,
fun?
I'm
Or
here. I'm
what do
taking
you-
on the weekends.
What are you going to think about driving home now, basically?
I mean, that's the big thing, is what am I going to take away from the weekend
Yeah.
to make me better? And the answer is, you know, for me personally, more practice, meaning more local events. Because I've been too on and off. It's been like a year since I've autocrossed, and I'm just jumping into a national event, which you can't do an expected place at the top because the caliber of people that are here. But it's just more practice for me, more practice at local levels events where you get more runs, you get more seat time. And there's usually 2 or 3 events per month in Florida because, you know, it's always autocross season in Florida, you know, endless summer. So you can always get out, people are always doing something, so it's just a matter of committing to it and having that mentality of I'm going to commit to it and I'm going to better myself, and I'm going to take videos, and I'm going to, you know, review those videos.
You have to have a car that actually runs first.
Yeah, and that's my biggest problem. You said driving home. I get to drive home in
the truck.
in a truck
Yeah.
that has worked
Totally.
very reliably, and not my Corvette, which has lived on a rack for like a year.
So hence the co-driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Grant, you've been quiet over there. What do you?
I think
what do you-
takeaway is to stop messing with my car.
Yeah.
Wait, no. He definitely needs to get rid of the 410 gears and go to like a 355.
So I've driven. I don't know if anyone else has driven Grant's car, but I drove Grant's car at a local event, and I can tell you that his throttle map in the 14 gears, it only has one throttle. It's either off or tire melting. That's it. There's only 2, so it's very difficult to drive smoothly.
Gotta hear the bald eagles.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
gives
Oh, you
birth.
hear them. Yeah.
And then, by the way, here, let's show you. Here's Grant's car back.
Yeah.
It's under the
Gone
banner
completely
there, but-
overboard.
Yeah, that's a pretty gnarly looking.
It's kind of similar to what you
Mustang.
had, just in a different class.
Yeah, so it's a lot
Same
like our old
suspension.
Cam Mustang, but on Hoosiers, on sticky tires.
And just a wing and some carbon
Yeah,
fiber bits.
and with a little more of a flare. So one thing that I see, you guys touched on this a little bit too, is I think one of the different mindsets in the local competitor versus a national competitor is the local guys tend to start with a car they like and build it and then go out and have fun with it. Whereas at some point you reach this point, like Danny said, where you're like, oh, okay, now I need to go find the car for the class I want to compete in, rather than just building a car I want. So I've struggled with that too. I mean,
This is an exceptionally sore subject for me, actually. And
Yeah.
it is applicable because you just bought a C5 TOC.
yeah, well, but I'm moving out of your class in like
Are you?
48 hours. Yeah,
What do you
we're-
want to go to?
we're mostly gonna focus. I think I'm building it for time trial nationals
Okay.
and Optima, but it's gonna be an SSM car.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I went out and bought, did a project on a C5Z because I wanted to have a competitive A Street car for a while. I wanted to buy the car for the class. Things escalated,
Yes.
quicker than we thought they would, and they do. And in my line of work, that's a hazard. It's not necessarily an unpleasant hazard, but it's it's a hazard. But yeah, I've faced that too, where it's like, and we face that editorially. Like, do we go out and do a project on a car that is the car for the class, or do we do a project that is just a cool car and we find a place to compete with it and showcase it? And what it kind of comes down to is we do a little bit of both. But yeah, as a competitor, I definitely agree to that point where it's like, I want to go out and find the right car for the class. I don't care what it is. I'm not loyal to anything but trophies at this point.
I can tell you I'm definitely not there yet. So I've had this 911 since 09 is when I bought it. And I think it got bumped from Super down into A Street about the same time I got it. So I've always been racing against the C5Cs and now, of course, the 1LE. And it's just a very different car than every other car in the class. And I won't say that it's worse. It's just very different, honestly, being rear engine and being a 6-cylinder. And, of course, now we've got the Lotus is showing up in A Street. At Fort Myers, we had the 370Z there also. And that really warmed my heart to show up to a field of cars that
Like
wasn't
5
just,
different cars in 4 months.
Yeah, that wasn't just C5Cs. Because forever for me, it was me versus the C5Cs. And I totally will admit that it is an outstanding autocross car, even though I've never driven one, and I really need to get behind the wheel one. but I mean, they're great autocross cars. I just don't have the desire to own one. I can't envision a point where I want to trophy so badly that I would sell this and get one of those instead. So for the meantime, I mean, if the point of this is to have fun, which to me it is. Like I'm like you said, I'm still at the point where I just want to have a car that I love, which is this one, and just run it in the class at its end.
And if it's competitive, great.
And if not, then not. And that's why I'm not, I'm not an ASP. I haven't tried to mod it or anything because, I mean, why bother? It runs great in A Street, and every now and then I'll pull out a trophy, and it's good enough for me.
So from that to a guy who's had, what, 38 cars, 40 cars?
Yeah,
It's terrible.
Yeah, like, are you just like to drive different stuff? Are you looking for a place where
No, I can't. Well, I'm certainly very lack of focus.
Yeah.
And then, buying car transaction is actually fun to me, which is kind of sad. It's like I just want to buy a car. I just want to sell a car. So it's one of those kind of things. Of course, I don't make any money from it. I think picking a class to be competitive, car has a lot to do with it. It's an art to pick the right car.
Yeah, at the right time.
At the right time, in the right car. But the problem is you can't spend the homework. You can't spend time to do the homework and say this is the right car for the right time, because it could be the wrong car for the wrong time within a year.
Yeah.
So if anybody's trying to chase and buy the competitive car to kind of move on and say, hey, I got the right car now, they get their feelings hurt because they go on buy it and next year it's no longer it.
Well, and it's one thing to make that decision in like a street class where you still have a car that you can go to CarMax and trade in. And it's another thing to make that decision in a street prepared class,
Yeah, much
or a street modified class.
I mean, maybe in South Georgia,
Yeah,
you could.
where it's like all of a sudden you've built something that is very personal and very expensive, and you're invested.
Return to stuff.
But it's
Never.
not. Yeah, but it's not worth anything to anybody but you at that point. Right. So
I'm
that's
okay with it.
yeah. And if you're okay with that, that's
Sorry, guys, custom
right.
shirt made.
So like is that kind of where you're at? Although I mean that's a great cam car, but it's not really a great.
Yeah, I have trunk
street
lids
mod
for
car.
cam. I like running. The
Sticky
Hoosiers
tires,
are.
yeah.
The Hoosiers are just addicting. Although when you do the burnout, it's money flying out the back.
Yeah. Honestly, it's not. Even with quote unquote street tires, the useful life on an autocross is fairly close to the same. By the time you got a 3,200 pound car grinding them up out there, they go. Yeah, there's not much difference at all.
Yeah, my Hoosiers lasted 4 events last year.
Okay,
To be fair,
yes.
that's not Hoosier's fault.
Yeah.
Grant.
That was
Grant
entirely my
burning
fault.
out of every
Yeah.
That was I installed the supercharger and liked hearing the freedom sing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott, how about you?
No,
Where are you at with your
I-
competitive spirit?
I mean, I absolutely want to be competitive, and going back to probably the first car that I built to be competitive, or even remotely competitive in autocross, was a 2007 Forester XT.
Okay.
Loved that car. It was a phenomenally good car. I did the STI, not the transmission swap. It had the 4-speed automatic, which I hated, but I bought it to be my daily driver. But I did coilovers and the STI turbo and stuff
But
like that.
still,
So,
there is no world in which a Forester XT will ever be competitive in any class of autocross.
right,
But
exactly.
What a
But I loved
fun
that.
thing to
It was
have,
fun
yeah.
to have, and everybody would come up to me and be like, "Oh, you've got because it was World Rally Blue, it was with gold wheels, it was the proper Subaru color," and everybody loved it. It didn't matter that I wasn't even coming close. I actually, in the class that I was competing in, which in SCCA you have, of course, it was an SM car.
Yeah.
Because it was boosted and everything else. It would not be a competitive SM car, but there's another autocross group in Florida, Fast, that they do things based more on, okay, how fast is your car actually going to be, and they'll put you in an appropriate class. And within that class, I was pretty competitive. I trophied a couple times, and it was, it's fun. You have a good time. But I decided, okay, I could either dump $20,000 into a Subaru Forester,
Which is what Grant would have done.
Yeah, which is definitely what Grant would have done. or I can sell it and I can get something that is going to be fast out of the box, which happened to be a 1999 C5 that was already pretty heavily modified. And worst decision I've ever made in my entire life. Not because there's anything wrong with C5s, it's just mine is a piece of crap.
It's really that Scott is actually cursed. So I was actually talking to Derek Taylor earlier, and he just recently bought a yellow CRX. And it recently came to my attention that there is a curse associated with the yellow Honda CRX. And Derek was aware of it and bought it. But Scott is the yellow CRX of Spectra Racing. If you are driving on the highway and you call him on the phone, you look at it.
Yeah, I literally was talking to him on the phone the other day, and I'm like, hold on, I'm going to start the car. Go to start the car. Battery's
All
dead.
I hear, literally in the background, all I hear is, hold on, I'm gonna make a lot of noise real quick, because of course he's talking about his, I'm gonna make freedom sounds, and all I hear is tick 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 tick, and I was just like,
Can I leave now?
Yeah, you should.
Well,
If
you
want
just,
to
I'm gonna go sit in your Camaro.
No.
Yeah, so Danny, like you've made more of a commitment, I think, to Cam than you have, cars in the last few years. And for those of you guys who don't know, Danny's built a really, really nice Classic American Muscle class Camaro 1LE. Is that like, did you set out to be a Cam guy with that car?
No, I did. Yeah.
And
So
I'm curious too on what was the path, because I see you've got things like fender flares, but like what did you do to it, and like where did it start?
okay, so to be honest, I mean, I really love being Cam because it's a class that has no rules. Right? So you were talking before autocrossing, I actually rode a lot of motorcycles, and I'm one of those typical guy where I would buy a Harley and I put a little doodads and then all the emblems and all that stuff, and I'd be really happy, right? So in SCCA solo, there's no class you can do that except Cam, right? In Cam, I can buy something, I can change this, I can add an emblem, I can cut my fender, I can do whatever I want to do. So somehow I kind of stumble onto it. I actually bought the Camaro for F Street, and then I drove it the first time. I just don't have any patience with something that didn't have that much grip. So then I thought about maybe I should do something different. So I put larger rims and tires on it, and that changed everything. And then I saw Cam there, then it just kind of went that way. I really enjoy doing it because I can put all kinds of stuff on it without being penalized or anything. So that's kind of where it started.
And as we found last year, like, the people are awesome.
Yeah.
It's a really cool scene. Like they're one of the, and we don't see it anymore, but kind of when I was first starting out, even 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot more in the days before street touring. Basically, there was a lot. There's a lot more intensity around rules changes, and there was a lot more protests flying around at nationals, and there were a lot of people operating in gray areas in different places. And with the introduction of like street touring and now Cam, you've kind of seen a lot of that stuff disappear.
Because there's an outlet for it.
Because there's an outlet for it.
Yeah.
If you want to do whatever the hell you want to do to a car, there's a place for you to go, and you don't necessarily have to, a street class car doesn't really reflect the mods that somebody does on the street.
Yeah,
for the most
and it
part.
has been nice to see an effort being made by the SCV to try to incorporate people that are maybe not serious business autocrossers, but they come to an autocross because how many people do you know show up to a local event
Yeah.
and they say, hey, I've got this and that, and they're like, oh, sorry, you're in super street mod.
Yeah.
Because they have a boost.
Because they put a cam in their car.
Yeah.
Just like my Forester. All I did was I took an STI turbo that was used. I mean, I built the car on a budget. STI turbo, put it in, STI intercooler, great, downpipe, everything, yada yada, and boom, it's a street mod car, and I'm competing against, cars on slicks, and I'm on I think my tires were like 235s or 245s, and it's just I didn't have a second set of tires for Hoosiers, and it was purely just because I wanted to build my car and have fun.
And that can be discouraging for a local.
Absolutely, it
They
can
have
be
to
very
face off
discouraging.
against someone really tough like that.
So now that you've seen this, like you've seen what it takes to compete, you've seen kind of where you sit, generally performance wise. Is this something you guys want to pursue a little bit and start have to up your game a little bit, or something that maybe you don't want to pursue, but you want to participate, even if you don't take it seriously from a competition perspective. You just want to be part of this scene because it's such a cool scene. Like what's your next step for national level competition?
I have the most adamant answer to this, so I'll go and answer. So I went to Fort Myers the last 2 weekends and doing this, and I actually am registered for Charlotte in a couple weeks also. So for me, I've gotten so hooked on the thermometer of how well am I really doing that you can only get here.
Yeah.
That like if I do well at a local event, like I'm happy to do well, but in the back of my mind, I'm wondering like, how well did I really do? Because like for example, Buccaneer, we have Mike King is there, and he's a great thermometer because he's a national level driver, but he's in H Street, and so course design can really separate my time in H Street versus him from H Street, and it doesn't really tell me how well I did.
Which is that's exactly why I went down to Fort Myers a couple times to run against Ruggles in the vet to see where we were and how far off I was. So it's like you find yourself seeking out these opportunities to compare yourself against the guys who are going to be here anyway, but seeking them out to compare yourself against them in a more controlled environment.
Yeah, it's nothing like, especially for us in the street class, like we have 17 people out here. You show up to an 8th Street or any of these other big street classes, and you've got more than 10 people, and they're all running like a very similar car, and for the most part the same tires on the same course. You really get to see the spread in talent, and it's to me the way that I think that the sport was envisioned to be, because PAX is, it's okay, but it's an inexact science, and you're never going to really know versus just running against people who have a similar car as you, which a local event doesn't afford unless you have a really common car like a Miata or like a BRZ or something.
How about you?
I don't know that I'll ever be super serious about autocross. I do enjoy it. I got into autocross because of Scott and Grant. And they brought me into it. They said, let's go and have fun. And I was driving a Cadillac ATS.
Oh, nice.
3.6. They called me the grandpa. I actually would be talking behind the camera. And, here comes grandpa. And I'd be autocrossing the ATS. And it had, I don't know, what were on there, 235s or whatever.
600 treadwear tires.
Yeah, they were like plastic tires. And I just had fun. And that's why I came back and did local events. That's why I went to Pro Solo. I knew it was going to be back competitive. Obviously, it was not competitive today.
Yeah, I always like to tell people to come out and have fun. Like at Buccaneer once, we had a national level driver come out in his wife's Toyota Prius. We had 80 drivers that day. He got 28th raw time in his Toyota Prius, and we had like 6 or 7 people never come back. And I'm like, no, it's not the point. Just like, because I do a lot of driver instruction and new driver, and I'm telling people like just have fun first. Don't look at the clock compared to your time to like people who've been doing this 30 years, because you're just gonna get disheartened.
I've been beat by a Honda Insight.
Yeah,
like I am not ashamed to admit that I got beat by. I was in the Forester. I got beat by a Honda Insight on the Hoosiers. It's like, talk about a momentum car. I mean, it took forever to get up to speed, but then it never slowed down. It's just like, what the hell?
Well, and that's something else that's kind of cool about the sport is, despite all the PAX corrections that you'll see at some events, the best drivers are still going to rise to the top. Yeah. And when you have an event like this where you have so much bigger of a sample space, there's more opportunity for the cream to rise to the top, and you're making accurate comparisons. I think, and that's the big difference for me in an event like this versus a local is this is a chance to make truly accurate comparisons. Like we have 17 cars in our class, so if you're anywhere mid-pack or above, you're maybe not competitive, but you've at least made steps for getting towards where you need to be. You can see the path at that point. Whereas you can be a couple seconds off at a local event and think, I did all right. And really, no, maybe you did. So how about Danny? How about you? You've in the time I've known you, you've always been a pretty hardcore competitor, but in a bunch of different cars. Do you think you finally found a car that you're going to stick with for a year or two now?
I can't promise that.
Yeah.
I think once you get into that habit, it's hard to change.
Yeah.
I will probably stay in camp for a while because there's a lot of things I can still do. I can go in there and start yanking out stuff and it costs us nothing.
Yeah.
It just requires labor. Yeah. So I'm going to end up doing it. The class is great. I enjoy doing it. I actually have I actually bought a 07 Honda Civic SI for H3. So I'm definitely, I know there are a lot of guys that will only run in certain type of classes. I don't care. I can run. I don't care what I run. I can be an H3. I can run C mod. I mean, I just like to drive. So I'll do anything. It doesn't matter. And my approach is a little bit different. I'm out here having a good time. I always go 10/10s on every run. I don't. There's no reconnaissance. So and that's and if I put the best effort out there, then it doesn't really matter how it happens. Right? So that's kind of my.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about the sport, and that's what keeps bringing me back to autocross, even after getting road racing licenses and trying some of that. Is I like the aspect of I like the mental aspect of road racing and the direct competition of road racing, but you're never going to match the intensity of autocross in any other sport. It just is never there. Like you're never going to match the need to always be at 100%, even on your first run before you've seen the course, because that might be your might be your best run. That might be the only chance you get to take it home. Something, conditions could change, weather could change, and there is no when the starter lets you go, that's when you have to perform. There's no getting your head into it. It's got to be there. So all right. So guys, what do you think? Was that any final thoughts? I mean, it's not even my show, and I'm asking if there's any final thoughts. What do you?
So, I mean, I think that, we talked about local versus national events, and I want to think that we should also touch on the social aspect that you get at a national event that you don't get at local. So, for one, it's the whole weekend. So, we're not in a big hurry to go home, and no one else is either. We're all hanging out and having a good time, and, we're having a conversation here on JRM Live, but you know what? Everyone else is too in the paddock. They're hanging out in their tents. They're having a conversation.
A bunch of them are watching us right now.
And they're watching us right now. Yeah. And it's to me the fact that you get to have your friends that maybe you don't see any other time because they live in DC, for example, but you still feel like they're your autocross family. You get to hang out together, and I mean local events, you get that, but here where it's a whole weekend, everybody comes together. That's what I truly come for.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that because that's changed so much in the time that I've been involved. When I first started autocross, we didn't even have the internet. I mean, it existed, but it wasn't anything we even knew.
Were all the pictures in black and white?
They were
There was all drawings.
A guy would sit at the side of the course and sketch everybody that went by, and we were actually they were all sepia toned. Everybody wore cowboy outfits and had a flintlock rifle
at the time.
But the community has gotten to where we've all been talking all week, and you guys live a couple hours away from me, and Danny and I talk every week. I mean, he lives 15-hour drive away from me. So with social media, the communities have gotten smaller, but I think that's only made these events even more of a social aspect, because it's these are people we know and we virtually hang out with all week,
daily basis.
and then we finally get to see each
have
other.
Facebook groups, and I think we chat with people all the time. I've seen people this weekend that I've seen their name probably
But you never met them face to face.
Facebook group, chatted, never met them. Now I get a chance to meet that person.
And so with what you guys do, that wasn't even a thing that we even conceive of, where a bunch of guys would get together and start cataloging their events on social media. There was just no way to do that. You had to start a magazine to do something like that. It's really exciting that we've kind of democratized the process of disseminating information, and people are able to do it independently.
Everybody's able to share it. I mean, even a lot of cars are being built with platforms that have the ability to share that information. Corvettes have track cams built in that put the information right on there, so that they can take that right out of their car, put it on their computer, and share it with all their friends, and say and it has all that information.
Or the best spoke model, Grant. Build their own.
So that's been, it's almost been a not a huge change in that these events have always been social, because ultimately, in autocross, you're driving halfway across the country for 6 minutes of track time. There's a lot of standing around, there's a lot of socializing, there's a lot of interaction. But with modern media and modern connectivity, we've gotten the chance to extend those times for indefinitely. Basically, we can bullshit with each other and bench race right up to the moment we see each other in person, and that's pretty exciting. So, all right, anybody else?
Good.
All right, so we will sign off with you guys. Thanks for sticking around. So when's this going to be on your website, everybody? Or
We'll share this live stream on our page immediately. But
Okay.
We'll be uploading another document to our YouTube channel, and Instagram's still
Kind of
live
highlight
the
of the
whole time.
weekend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Throw in some highlights that we've
Some
taken
highlights,
of
yeah.
me hitting a cone dead center with the GoPro, which is pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
Oh, so what's the YouTube channel? Is it
Spectro
on the sign
Racing.
here?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, just
Yeah, we have what we've kind of been known for is we kind of did the beginnings of like actually recording a decent autocross run, because before it was just like windy garbage. So we put together like how to do like a remote microphone and like a cheap $8 setup when I had to do like the data telemetry, which has gotten a lot easier to do with like the Corvette and stuff like that. So we have a lot of instructional stuff like that, and we try and keep it all safe and legal and just fun. So
yeah, it's fun stuff. But we linked you guys in Facebook, and then is there a link to your YouTube page from your Facebook page?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you just scroll back in the chat, and it's up
Instagram.
there, and then we'll throw a link up.
Twitter.
Come on, everybody. Twitter. Yeah, no, I can't keep up anymore. We do Facebook and YouTube, and that's about as much as we can commit to. Too much to keep up with. All right, guys. Thanks everybody. Thanks to the Jerem Live audience. We'll give you more information about these guys. We're back with our regular Wednesday show on Wednesday, obviously, and I might try and do some look-ins tomorrow while we're out on course, and if I can pull my head far enough out of my ass to actually drive well tomorrow, we'll see. But thanks to the whole gang from Spectro Racing and Danny, and wave goodbye, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again Wednesday. Good night, everybody.
See ya.